Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finance on Your Terms with your host, Mike, and my current co-host, Avin. There we go. Love it. Welcome back to our series on kids and money. Recap for you real quick. A couple weeks ago, we talked about visualization and opportunity costs for kids and their money. You know, how do we best visualize it for them to make sense of what can be a very complex subject. Last week, we talked about setting a good example. Everything we do, they see everything. They hear everything. That's just kids. They remember stuff. She remembers stuff that I don't remember at all. And for weeks at a time. So making sure that the conversations we do have about money, even though we might be stressing about them behind the scenes, how do we turn that into a constructive conversation with them, and how do we make sure they understand that money just doesn't come out of nowhere, that it is earned and needs to be spent responsibly. So that was last week. This week I want to touch on something that's going to be a little less relevant for you, being 6 years old, and maybe start to become a little bit more relevant for getting into your teenage years. So talking about the idea of actually creating things like a bank account and budget. So for Avin here, we don't necessarily have a budget for you laid out. What if maybe you have a job and there's expenses, what money are you bringing in, what bills are you paying, or if we're about to go off to college and now we want to go out and buy a car or things along those lines. But the earlier you can actually start a budget, or in this case, what have we done with you? We've kind of laid out, okay? We've laid out where we're at for your goal, for being able to buy this doll that you want to buy. Okay, and these are the various prices that are rewards that you get for doing your chores throughout the week. So even though that's simple, that's still the idea of a budget. What money's coming in, what money is going out, what goals do we have financially. Now, as we get closer and as we get into those teenage years, and whether we're saving for college or saving for a car, we've got a job, we've got more money coming in, how is that money being spent? That becomes more and more critical to design some type of budget. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be on pen and paper. You can use an Excel spreadsheet. You can even go out and use some type of app, which there's a bunch of them out there. Some simpler, some more complicated. Go find what works for you. But the sooner you get the concept of what money's coming in and what money's going out and where that money's going, your mind just starts to think more logically about that and more analytically about, all right, what do I got and what are my options out there? And so this next thing, the idea of having a bank account goes right along with it. That's parallel. So even at this age with Avin, what we've done is I don't like to deal with a lot of the cash. All right, so we actually went out and found an app that we can set her up with a very, very basic kids bank account, and with that we have access to goal setting tools and charts. So we've got one on our iPhone, and then she's got access to one on her iPad. So just like an old iPad that we threw the app on there. Now we have all the control over it, and we can actually do things with the funds, money in, money out, and see some of the more complex tools. What she sees is, all right, we set a goal to get to this amount. These chores, actually get you rewarded with these dollars and cents. How close are we to getting to that goal, right? And you can actually see that, and it goes back to week 1 where we talk about visualizing. But setting up that bank account, sometimes when we don't see the money, when it's not cash in our pocket, especially as we get to be a teenager, especially if we've got a job, getting paid, if we're able to put that money into a bank account and then maybe set a savings account aside for a separate goal, down payment on a car perhaps, or buying a car, then that sometimes becomes easier to just put the money aside, save it, versus I'm going to go out to eat 5 times a week and that money is absolutely gone. So what tools are available to you to set up simple bank accounts if you don't want to deal with the cash directly, and to set up a budget no matter how easy or simple it is. And with the bank accounts, I think I mentioned this prior, is that it doesn't have to be online or accessed by both of you. It can just be one or the other, but out of sight, out of mind is the key. Last thing I want to talk about is debt. And so when we get closer to college, especially age 18. That's kind of the kicker for all these credit card companies and everybody else with loans and stuff. So preparing the idea of, well, we know what compound interest does. We know what saving money does. That builds and builds and builds, and you earn a little bit money on top of that. So that money goes to work for you, so you can get your stuff that you want. But the idea of credit card debt and having to pay interest and how quickly that can add up too. So introducing that concept when kids get closer and closer to college. So I know we went over a lot in that video, but the idea here is, again, no matter what the age, some type of bank account, some type of budgeting tool, and then as we get closer to college, making sure we get across the point how damaging interest, how damaging things like credit cards can be if we don't understand them. Because again, even as adults, sometimes they get away from us. So making sure that gets embedded, that gets ingrained as soon as possible. So thank you so much for tuning in again. Kids and Money is the theme. We got one more week coming at you, so tune in next week. This has been Mike, and I know Avon didn't talk much. She didn't get to talk much this time, but she'll be back at it for the next video. This has been Mike Benaziak and Avon. There we go, with Finance on Your Terms. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to share the video.